This morning I'm going to do a run through of Bohemian Villages, a new game from DLP Games and Reiner Stockhausen. Uh, Bohemian Villages is a 2 to 5 player game and is supposed to take about 30 minutes to play, which I've found to be pretty accurate. I've set up a 3-player game this morning using red, green, and blue characters, and I'd like to talk through the setup and rules run through. There are 8 village tiles used in a 3-player game. There is one additional tile that's used in a 5-player game, and you use fewer tiles in a 2-player game. You can see there's coins and values 1, 5, and 10, and there are some tiles over here that I'll explain in just a moment. When you do the setup, each of these village tiles is actually reversible. So I usually just do even, odd, and just kind of flip over for randomization. And you'll notice that each of these beautiful tiles here with artwork by Clemens Franz has a number of buildings on it. And we'll talk through what each of these buildings does as part of the rules run through. There's a handy little player aid that comes with the game for each player. And this talks about what each of these buildings do. You can see the numbers on the left side correspond to the building type. 2, 3, 4, and 5 are considered shops, and each of those is noted out on the board. So for example, the number 2 here is the bakery, number 5 is the tailor shop, sorry for the light, number 4 over here is the dairy, and number 3 over here is the butcher shop. The way that those work is you're going to be placing some of these workers in a 3-player game. You're going to have 13 workers for each player. And the goal of the game is to get the most money, as seen back there, in coins. And the game ends when, at the start of your turn, you have no more workers to place out on the board. Now, there is a way to kick out people's workers off the board back into their supply, hence extending the length of the game. The key mechanic of the game centers around the 4 dice here, and on your turn you're going to roll the 4 dice, and you're going to group them either into 2 groups or potentially just use 1 group. You can never play a dice by itself, so this 4 could not be played by itself. So you can do a group as a 10 and a group as a 5, or any varying combinations of those. You can play a group of 3 by itself, but it would only allow you to play 1 worker. And generally what you're going to do is you're going to take these dice and assign a grouping of dice and use that pip value to place a worker on the board. So if you were going to play a 10, then you would place it on a building as such. And once all of your workers are gone and it is the start of your next turn and no one has kicked you out, then the game will end. Let's talk briefly about what each of the buildings do. So, as I mentioned, buildings 2, 3, 4, and 5, these are considered shops. Shops do nothing in terms of earning you money during the game, but at the end of the game, according to the little player aid, for each different type of shop that you have a worker in, you can earn 1, 5, 12, or 20 coins. So if you have a worker in a 2 building, basically in a bakery, a butchery, a dairy, and a tailor shop, you can earn up to 20 coins at the end of the game. Okay, so that's 2 through 5. Number 6 is this little mill building here, and you can see a little bag of flour sitting next to it. At the start of the game, we counted up the number of mills, and you can see that I have these tiles set off to the side. When you place a worker in a mill or in a glass factory, which is designated by these glass tiles, I've counted out the number of those buildings as well. When you place a worker on there, you take that flour bag and place it next to your set of workers or your supply of workers. When all of the tiles have been gathered during the game for the flour or for the glass factory, when either one of those piles is depleted, then you do an intermediate scoring. And on your player aid, it shows that the flour mill, when they're all occupied, for each figure that you return, you earn $2. For the glass factory, it's $3. So if all of the spots are covered out on the board, which in this particular game, because of the way the tile is laid out, we have 5 of the glass factories and 4 of the flour mills, You would score for each player would return those glass tiles or those flour bags to this area over here on the side of the board, and they would score either 3 points for the glass or 2 points for the flour. So it's a good way to earn some points, and by points I mean money, during the game. Okay, so that covered 6 and 7. So any die combinations you replace out there for those. Number 8 is farms, and you can see at the top of many of these boards there is a number 8 that has a little field with a coin icon. This is one of the times during the game when you can actually earn coins immediately. When you place a worker on an 8, you get a coin immediately. Then the next time you place in a field, say that you place up there, you're actually going to count the total number of farms, and so then on this turn you would get 2 coins. And then on a following turn, if you were to place another one, then you would count up again the total number of farms, and that would be 3. You only score for the number of fields that your players control, but it is a way to kind of build up your economy during the game. All right, number 9. Number 9 is the inn. And the inn, this symbol here shows a little barrel or a keg. You notice there are corresponding symbols over on this side of the board. At the start of the game, I counted up, in this setup, there were 6 of these inns, so there are 6 tiles that are placed. These are 2-sided tiles, an active side and an inactive side. And the way the inns work is once you place a worker in an inn, it immediately earns you one of these tiles on the inactive side, and you'll place that over in your play area, for example. Now, the way that the inn gets activated is if you or other players place workers in that city. So let's say, for example, I had this set up and I got to a 3rd worker. Once the inn correspondingly has 3 additional buildings filled in that little town tile, only when the 3rd one is filled, then you will take your tile and you will flip it over. And at the start of every turn thereafter, before you roll your dice, you get an extra coin for that round. And for each inn that you have activated, you can activate obviously quite a few more there. In this particular game we have 6. For each activated inn you have, you score a coin. And that can add up to some good point scoring during the middle of the game. All right, number 10. Number 10 are these city squares, the town halls as they call them, and you can see a little dollar value in the little box in the center. That is at the end of the game you would score. So this one up here is one of the higher scoring ones, has 9. This one has 6, and 9 there, 9 there, and so on. So there's a few that have 7. So some of them, they do vary in range. If you place a worker in the town hall, you do not score any points immediately. In fact, the only way to score points for that building is if all of the buildings in the city are full. So if this city here happens to be completely full of workers, then you actually can score 6 coins at the end of the game. If you have a city that's bigger, you can see has more buildings in it, then it'll score 9 coins at the end of the game. All right, so that's number 10. All right, another way to score coins in the middle of the game is with number 11, which is the church. Now the church is a little bit unique. You can see this little bishop's hat, and the bishop's hat is up here as a separate tile. You can acquire the bishop's hat by using doubles, as shown on your player aid here. And each round that you own the bishop's hat, you can score $1 for every church that you are present in. So once you have this building occupied, you do not score a coin immediately, but if you acquire the bishop's hat on a separate turn, let's say you spent a pair of doubles and you had this bishop's hat in your area, then at the start of the next round before you roll your dice, you would earn a coin for not only this church, but any other church out here that you might have your workers in. So if Red had another worker over in this church here, they would score 2 coins per round. And I could tell you from a recent play with some coworkers that that is a pretty good strategy. If no one stops you, if no one takes away the bishop's hat, it's pretty easy to start scoring quite a few points during the game. We let a guy go too far on that, and he ended up winning the game because we didn't stop him from having the bishop's hat. Once the bishop's hat is taken away from you, the only way to start scoring points on your churches again is to reacquire the bishop's hat. Finally, number 12 is the manor. And the manor is listed in the corner, and it'll score you immediately the number of points that are shown or the number of dollars that is shown in the box at the bottom. So this building is $5. This one happens to only be $1, $8, $6, and so forth. So there is quite a range on these, and it appears to be somewhat dependent upon the number of buildings that are there. Again, when you go to that building, you just place your worker there. Obviously, you have to roll double sixes or use a combination of multiple dice to achieve the number 12, and you immediately get those coins. So getting eight coins early in the game can kind of give you a lead and put some pressure on other players, and make it a little bit more challenging for them to feel like they're behind and need to catch up. Now, there is one other set of tokens over here that I haven't explained yet, and that's these little tokens right here. These are the reroll tokens. At any point in your turn, if you'd like to, you can spend 2 of your dice to acquire a reroll token. They don't have to be doubles, they can just be any type of token. You take that reroll token, place it in front of you, and you can use that on the existing turn. So you could acquire a reroll token with 2 dice, and then you immediately use that reroll token again to reroll your other dice. Or you can save it for another turn and be able to roll any or all of your dice, obviously before using the dice. Once you've used the dice, they're out of your pool. But you can spend that. Those are especially important in late game when you really need to bump somebody out of a building, or you need to finish that last spot to score your town hall, one of your 10 buildings. Now, there is a bump out mechanic that is available in this game on some of the buildings. And the way that works is if I have a guy in the 5 building, and let's say that I had 2 guys in both these 5 buildings. You can occupy more than one. And you can see that there are no more 5 buildings available. If, for example, the yellow player rolled a 5, they could bump out one of my guys out of the buildings, and they would just basically replace them. If you occupy a building already, so yellow could not bump out my other 5, my other worker, because if you occupy a building already, you cannot, that number of building, you cannot bump out somebody else. So that is a rule there. You also have to always go for the unoccupied buildings first before bumping out other workers out of buildings. So you can't play just to be mean, but you can take advantage of bumping people out. One other important rule I talked about with the flowers and the glass tiles, that you acquire all these tiles. That is intermediate scoring during the game. All your workers do come off those buildings when you score those tiles. At the end of the game, any leftover flower and glass tiles are worth, you total up the total value of those and divide it by the number of tokens you have. So 1 glass is worth 3, and 1 flower is worth 2. That's a total of 5. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, and you round down, so you get 2 points. They're not just worth 1 each. There is a possibility, with the right combination, you could score a little bit more. But in general, that's how that scoring works. You add up the total value, what those would be during the game, divide them by half, and round down. So you can get a few extra points at the end of the game for that. At the end of the game, the way scoring works is you total up the value of your shops. And again, as I mentioned here, the different types of shops you score will score 1, 5, 12, or 20 points. That is in-game scoring. Then the churches, whoever has the most churches occupied with their workers will score 10 points. Second place will score 6. If there was a tie for first, then all the players score 6 only. And that obviously is a source of points as well. In addition to the shops and the church, there is one final bit of scoring here that I'm forgetting about, that the town halls in the center of the board, if this is all occupied, then you will score each of those buildings at that time as well. So there is the potential for a good portion of your score to come at the end of the game. And I think that's all I have for the overview. Any questions, comments? That's a brief look at Bohemian Villages by DLP Games.